Welcome back to PR After Hours. I'm your host, Alex Greenwood, bringing you your weekly cocktail of PR and marketing tips that will help you and your business. Stick around, we'll get started right after these messages. Hello, listeners. It's me, Alex, from PR After Hours. I hope you're enjoying the show so far. And I wanted to talk to you just for a moment about the way I get this show right into your earbuds every week. It's because I use Anchor FM. Now, I've told you previously that I've been podcasting since 2006, back when we used stone knives and bear skins and a couple of Dixie cups and string. Anchor FM has really streamlined this and made it simpler for people who don't know the first thing about setting up a podcast or don't have, time to learn all the pro tools and stuff, because it's all right here. First thing it's important to know is it's free. There are certain tools that will allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will then distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. That's huge. Distribution is a big pain in the butt, to be honest with you, so it's really great Anchor FM can do that for you, and you're not paying hosting fees. That adds up every month. It's everything you need to make a podcast all in one place, so download the free Anchor app or go to Anchor FM to get started, and be sure to join me in the virtual cocktail lounge on PR After Hours. Working from anywhere, my goodness. We're all working from somewhere, but are we working from our typical offices, or are we working from a virtual location? And what are the tools that can get you there and help you be more effective? We're going to find out, because today we're talking with Jeff Mendelson. He's founder of Effectivo.Social, a full-service digital marketing agency where he works with developing comprehensive digital marketing campaigns for startups to establish businesses. Now, he's based in Miami, Florida, but works worldwide and helps entrepreneurs conceptualize, develop, and then execute all-encompassing digital marketing strategies, sales funnels, paid campaigns, and getting the right people and disciplines in place. With more than 15 years of continuous digital marketing experience in all formats, Jeff's a wealth of information on what works and what doesn't. We're going to find out today what Jeff thinks about that. Jeff, welcome to the virtual lounge.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate you taking the time.
I appreciate you taking your time. Very generous of you. I would assume busier than ever right now with digital marketing. Is that a fair assumption?
That is a fair assumption. Yeah, it just seems that when this pandemic thing hit, at first everyone was really running scared. Oh my God, like what's going to happen? But something like, if your client base are doctors, like people still get sick, women still have babies, people still have cancer, things like
Sadly,
that. So,
yes, yeah.
Right. A lot of life has gone on. And, just to, of course, there are a lot of people out there that are not as fortunate to have jobs that are necessarily needed. But, what happens is that, especially in this space, you just got to pivot. And I think that this has really been a wake up call for a lot of people to pivot their offerings.
Right. Now, were you, if you're like me, I've worked from co-working spaces prior to COVID. I had an office at one time, with 6 people in it. And I just decided a few years ago, I don't need the overhead. So I started working virtually from just about anywhere. Is that kind of your path, or were you before COVID in a office environment?
No, I was mostly in, when the kids were little, I would work from home. Right. And then when the divorce came around, I'm like, the hell with that. I don't want to work from home anymore. So, it's boring, and, no one talks to you during the day. And it's like, when I go from 100% dad to a 50% dad, it's like, okay, now what? Right. So the time that I didn't need to be home, I would travel, I would try to find an interesting place to go. So got a subscription to WeWork. And just start, finding the cheapest tickets I could. And that was really my MO for more than a number of years.
I've done the WeWorking thing too. I got it because I'm through my American Express card, and I just thought I'd try it out locally just to get out of the house before COVID. I don't travel as much as you, but when I have traveled, I was just getting into that whole vein of like, well, I've got clients who are in New England, and I'm in Kansas City, so I had clients in New England. I had some clients in California. I thought this will be great, and then COVID hit, and I'm not as brave as a lot of people. I'm still afraid to fly and do anything, but so I'm making it work from home. So that, I guess, that brings me to where we are. How are you doing this, Jeff? How do you, and what advice do you have to give to our listeners about ways of working successfully from a remote location? Do you have some tips for us?
Yeah, definitely. I would say the first and foremost is over communicate, right? You really got to over communicate with both with your clients and with the people that you work with, whether they're contractors, employees, like what have you. You really need to over communicate because we really lost that that water cooler thing where I can take someone out for coffee and actually meet with them. And that was actually one of the things that I took a lot of pride in because a lot of the places I would travel to are places where my contractors happen to be, like in Israel or in Argentina or in Uruguay or in Greece. It's like, wow, like I finally have the ability to go to these places. Why not? Right.
Right.
And what happened was that as I was traveling to these places and meeting them, it's much different than when they're, 4 inches, a 4-inch square on your screen than when they're a living, breathing person. And that really ferments a much, a much better bond. Like people really admire and they really put up. I don't know. I'm at a loss of words. They really they think it's really cool
Yeah.
that someone would actually fly all the way over to where they live in order to do it, right? And what happens is that it just ferments a much better working relationship. So the people that I have been able to fly over and meet in person, like still with me, I'm still like their favored contractor, their favorite freelancer, things like that, because we do now have that personal connection, which isn't just a Zoom call.
Right, right. So when it has to be virtual, I mean, you're maintaining those touches as best you can. So when it has to be virtual, well, is there an MO? Do you prefer Zoom? Do you use Skype? What do you do?
So Zoom does the job pretty much well, right?
Right.
For the most part, it's a low to medium bandwidth, product. Most people can converse easily on the platform. Um, I would say it's a combination, right? So Zoom is definitely if you wanna see their face. Slack works well if you just wanna bang out a quick communication with them. So I used to do it by text message or by WhatsApp, but or Telegram even. But what happened
Wow.
is that even in all of those platforms, they just sort of like split apart. And the one I found that at least the best works for me right now, business wise, is Slack, because you can, even if you delete it off your computer and then just install it just on your phone, all of the history remains. It all comes back up. Now, if you buy a new iPhone, right, or you switch from iPhone to Android, you lost all of those messages, right? They're all
Yeah.
gone.
Yeah.
So, that whole continuity thing, was really important. And, it just goes back to that overarching deal of you need to over communicate, because I don't care if you're across the street or halfway around the world, you're remote to me, right? It really doesn't matter if you're in Fort Lauderdale to Miami, right? You're remote. So it's real important that you maintain that connection so that you can, so that they understand what it is that I'm expecting from them,
Right.
right? And I understand, what they're expecting as well. And what it comes down to is being very verbose in the tasks that they assign to me, being very verbose in the tasks that I assign to them, not just saying, hey, can you fix this? It's broken, on this page with this URL, with this description, here's a screenshot with a big arrow next to it, right? That's what you need to fix, right? And
Yeah.
once you get into that habit, then it's like, okay, yeah, now I got it, right? It's like, pretend I'm a fourth grader, just explain it to me like I'm a fourth grader, and that's what I need to see happen.
I have a client working with currently that uses Slack, and I had not used Slack much. I'd heard about it, and I found it remarkably easy to get into. And you can attach documents to it and images, just like you say. It's very easy to keep it going. I don't even use it on my phone because I don't go anywhere right now, but I'm going to make sure I do have it going forward because things eventually I think I'll get out of the
So,
bunker.
so the killer feature of Slack, though, is not so much, messaging apps are messaging apps. There are lots of them, right? The cool thing about Slack is that you can have threaded conversations, right? So if I tell them like, hey man, can you take care of this? Then when you can hit reply, and then that reply sort of goes off to the side, and then you just have a threaded conversation about that one topic. And that's something that none of the other messaging apps have,
True.
right? So that's what makes it, at least for me, a little bit easier to work with.
Yeah, and that's something I would advise a lot of you to listeners to look into. Slack's pretty low barrier to entry, and just like Jeff said, you've got what I love about that too. That functionality is it's all there. You're not losing that history. Particularly for me, I mean, I'm a public relations guy. I do a lot of writing. I like if they want to use Slack primarily, I like the fact that all my drafts as edited and sent back and forth are there if we want to do that. Now, and frankly, at first when I started using Slack, Jeff, I was like, oh God, not another, like I had used
Not another
Basecamp.
one, right?
Yeah, I'd used Basecamp years ago. I'd used Harvest. I used some of these and I was, I did not like them, but Slack, I just jumped right into. And I prefer that. I've got a lot of clients who still like Google Docs, which, okay. Besides Google Docs, there's good old fashioned Dropbox, which I have accounts for all that stuff because you got to meet your clients where they want to be met. But I do agree with you that Slack is a really good one people should consider.
Exactly. Yeah. So, what happens is that Slack is just that. It's just the messaging part. And, the fact that it interfaces with Zoom and Google Docs and OneDrive and all that, that's just icing on the cake, right?
Yeah.
Because, the fact that you can just click on it and it knows exactly what to do with it. Okay, great. But you're right. You still need to work with with the people in Google Drive. You need to make sure that all that is set up correctly. You need to make sure that your OneDrive is set up correctly. Meet your clients where they are, right? Don't make them go in and, get a Google account just because you have one.
Yeah. And I've made that mistake once. I was just all Mr. It will be so efficient for everybody. And I technically was right, but it annoyed the crap out of them because they didn't want to do it. You got to meet them where they are. What other things are you doing or are you finding out that have been helpful for you to maintain client relationships, if anything?
I would say it's more along the lines of, making sure that you're keeping up with their needs, right? And, trying to make sure that you understand what's going on in their world. So I'll give you an example. One of my clients is an OBGYN, right? And I, at first, went into this, started out like, well, yeah, they're going to be fine. The baby's not going to stop coming in May, right? Baby's coming. So, that was like the first thing that I was like, yeah, everything's going to be fine. And then when they told me that it wasn't, that's when it was really a wake up call, because, they had to limit the number of patients that they could see. They had to limit the number of patients that could be in a room. And all of that affected their revenue stream, right? So they had less people were coming for wellness exams, for example. Less people were coming, maybe they would skip one or two appointments, before the baby was born, and all that cumulatively has an effect, right? So, it goes back to communication, call them up. What's going on? What trends do you see? Right. And even when, and it's a combination of keeping up with the news, right? What's happening in Miami-Dade County, for example, versus Broward County, which is where Fort Lauderdale is. And let me tell you, they were running two different paths, just cross over the county line. And all of a sudden you can't go to restaurants anymore. And all of a sudden you can't go to, so it was like, these are like really big things that affect a lot of people. So it really came down to making sure that I was in good contact with them and understanding their problems and trying to meet them exactly where they were. So it meant, changing the tone of the blog posts that we write for them. It meant changing some of the paid ads that we would write. It meant changing some of the service hours. Like if I'm managing their website, I got to make sure that their website is up to date and, conveys the correct information. And it's all about asking the right questions, right? Okay. How can I help you? How can I make sure that everything's running smooth? And for the most part, people or companies that have, that basically have this under control, they're like, okay, yeah, Jeff, we need you to do 1, 2, and 3. We need you to send out a mailing for, for this particular subset, and then everything should be okay. And for the most part, that's how I was able to maintain a lot of those relationships, by not ignoring them or assuming, but actually getting on the phone and talking to them and understanding their needs and meeting them where they are.
Listeners, this is something we get back to with, I think, with a lot of my favorite guests are the ones who simply value communication, and as Jeff has put it, over communicating. If you feel like you're going overboard on communication, you'll soon find out with your clients as he said earlier, meeting them where they are, and that includes about communication. I've had some clients where Jeff, just like you, I'm like every day checking in, letting them know what's going on, and I finally had a couple of them just say, we're good here. You can check in twice a week or a week, and that's fine too. But I think they appreciated the attentiveness, and they did. So in the minute or two we have left here, Jeff, I'd love to know just a little bit more about your business, if you don't mind. If you want to do a little quick commercial here, I'd love to hear a little bit more.
Sure. So I've been in the digital marketing industry for over 15 years now. I've seen just about everything come and go. We're a full service digital marketing agency. So we build websites. We do content marketing for businesses. So we write the blogs. We manage the social channels and the paid ads. We also build sales funnels, landing pages. We help you out strategically on what works, what doesn't. I have access to the Google Analytics to a plethora of different companies. So, I can tap in and see, what's been working for them and what's not been working for others. And it really provides a nice education to seeing what works even in different industries. So if you want to reach out, best way is on probably on LinkedIn. Just find me, Jeff Mendelson, Mendelson. I also have a podcast called the One Big Tip Podcast, which you can find at jeffmendelson.com. And I love paying it forward. So please feel free to reach out.
Well, we're going to put all those links in the show notes so you can get a hold of Jeff. And Jeff, I really appreciate, I know how busy you are. I appreciate you taking the time to join us here in the virtual lounge. You're welcome back anytime, sir.
Thank you so much, man. I really appreciate it.
Oh, you know what that means? Looks like it's last call here at your virtual lounge for PR news, views, and interviews. Don't forget, you can ask me a question anytime. You can do it through our Twitter account, which is @HoursPR, or even better, you can send me a message vocally. I would love to hear your voice, and I'll answer it on the show. There's a link in the show notes. All you have to do is sign up through Anchor FM. It's free, doesn't take long. And you record your message, I get the message, I will play your audio, just give me your first name and the city you live in, and then I will answer the question to the best of my ability right here on the show. Don't forget to, if you're enjoying this podcast, you can support it and help increase the frequency and value of the show. Just consider being a sponsor for your brand or your agency or just yourself because you're like, I like this show. Or just drop a few coins in the virtual tip jar. Either way, there's links in the show notes. Please check that out. All of that, of course, being in the show notes where you're listening right now or at prafterhours.com. I see that they're turning up the lights. Last call is over, and I've got to clean up this virtual lounge. And until next time, I'm Alex Greenwood, and you've been listening to PR After Hours on Anchor FM.